right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Monty and Murdy College Football Show. Monty, what's up, man? How we doing?
What's going on? Yeah, we're doing pretty good, other than it coming to the end of the season.
Sucks.
Recap for the rivalry week. We had some interesting games, some upsets, some games that were handled a little bit better than others. But excited to talk about them.
Yeah, as expected, we had some crazy results out of rivalry week, and yeah, it's always one of those good ones because you just get a little passionate mix there, a little bit of hatred coming into those games. So even teams that seem like they don't have a chance, or it looks like they're going to get blown off the field on paper, they end up stepping up to the plate, playing a pretty good game. So let's go ahead and dive in.
No flag plants to my knowledge, though. So a little contrary to last year, or at least no headlining flag plants.
Well, I've noticed two things that are different from last year. Last year we had a bunch of flag plants and we had a bunch of field storms. Not as many field storms this year, and I haven't seen any flag plants so far.
Yeah, no, I didn't see any flag plants. I know Ohio State's players started going towards the middle of the field, but Ryan Day, class act, shut that down. So, but anyways, yeah, we can dive in here to these rivalries.
All right, we're going to kick it off right where we started last week. Georgia versus Georgia Tech. Georgia ends up winning 16-9. Georgia Tech made it a little closer in the second half to get to that 9 points, but they were just never able to find the end zone with Haynes King. Ultimately, you're not going to beat this Georgia team if they just keep you kicking field goals the entire time. Gunnar Stockton, I wanted to get your opinion on this one. How would you weigh Gunnar Stockton's performance here? Georgia was having really kind of their way with Georgia Tech as far as how, if they wanted to run the football, they ended up with 190 yards rushing, 4.1 yards per rush. So you kind of saw almost a limited Gunnar Stockton here, where he only threw for 70 yards. He was 11 for 21 for 3.3 yards per pass and an interception. Do you think this is Georgia just, hey, we're getting everything we want in the ground game. Our defense is playing really well. Do we just not want to jeopardize something here by trying to have Gunnar Stockton air it out? Or do you think this was kind of Georgia Tech's defense stepping up and being able to, and really limiting how effective Gunnar Stockton in that passing attack were?
Yeah, I mean, for this game,
that's a loaded question. Yeah.
But there's kind of two things, right? So yeah, I'm sure there was probably, Kirby Smart and company had something to do with this from a coaching standpoint. Maybe they saw how well the defense was doing, which you didn't get a whole lot of this year, right? From Georgia. Georgia's defense wasn't, the typical Georgia defense that you're used to under Kirby Smart. And maybe because, early on in the game, they were able to see that, okay, they're playing pretty well, able to limit Georgia Tech's offense, that maybe they throttled back. Can't say whether they did or didn't. But still an underwhelming game from Gunnar Stockton, right? Only threw for 70 yards. Like, you see with these teams that are at least to Georgia's caliber, right? Ohio State and teams, Alabama, stuff like that. Even when they throttle their quarterback back, it's still like, they'll have like 150 yards or 180 yards. Like 70 yards through the air is maybe one drive, right? And you still played a full 4-quarter game. So I think it was an underwhelming game from him. I think it was just an ugly game on offense for Georgia. Yes, they dominated in the run game, but they dominated in the sense of that Georgia Tech also just couldn't run the ball. They had a total of 260 yards on offense, Georgia did, which, going into the playoffs and after the last couple of weeks of Georgia, everyone's talking about how Georgia's kind of peaking, and then it's kind of, just you didn't expect this from them. Georgia Tech in their last 3 games has given up 30-plus points, 42 to Pitt. And then, they
gave up over 30 to Boston College.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And that's in their past 3 games, right? And then you have Georgia coming, the best team of all those teams that they played. And, they score 16 points. So whether that's, props to Georgia Tech's defense, I don't know. But it was, I think, an underwhelming game overall for Georgia's offense. But also, props to their defense, right? they were able to get it done, and we haven't, like I said, we haven't really seen that from their defense this year. So maybe is that a good thing for Georgia moving forward? We'll see. Definitely, we'll see in the SEC championship against Alabama. But on the Georgia Tech side, I hope that answered your question. But
Yeah,
on
no, that
the
that makes sense. It's probably a little bit of both.
yeah,
Not, I mean, Gunnar Stockton, he had the early interception in this one, and after that point, you didn't really see Georgia even. I mean, 21 attempts. I mean, he missed. He's 50% roughly completing his passes. But like you said, there's something to be said about winning ugly. You still got to win. If anybody knows about winning ugly, it's what right here, baby. So it seems to be all we do. But hey,
and
um,
losing ugly.
yeah,
You think?
losing ugly. So yeah, it was. I mean, overall, it was kind of you kind of got to see how they were able to limit. Georgia Tech, they had been pretty one dimensional on offense. It kind of goes through Haynes King, but he still had to. I mean, I don't think it was a terrible day throwing the ball for him. It just wasn't, you know, just outlandish, and Georgia just did really good limiting it. And it only came in small chunks. It wasn't back-to-back plays where they get a drive going. You didn't see a lot of that from Georgia Tech, and limiting them to 3 field goals. That's going to win you just about in any game that you're playing in.
Yeah, and that's kind of the only really thing I have to say about Georgia Tech. I wasn't going to talk a whole lot about like the game specifically for them, just because they weren't really able to do much. It was
Yeah.
more about just overall because we're at the end of the year. That was their last regular season game. Like I would still consider this year an absolute win for Georgia Tech. I know Georgia Tech fans might be like, "Oh, well, we started 8-0, now we're 9-3." It's like, yeah, but you went 9-3 under Brent Key. It's like that's really promising, and I know Georgia Tech fans have been saying, well, this was the year to do it, right? They didn't make the ACC championship, and it was the year to do it because they had Haynes King for one more year. They had a lot of production coming back. But you're Georgia Tech. You're not the premier program in Georgia, and you're going 9-3. Like you are showing that you're able to at least compete, right? Compared, so last year and this year, like yeah, they didn't go to 8 overtimes this year with Georgia, but they did hold them to 16 points and only lost by a touchdown. And you're 9-3, right? Yes, you didn't make the ACC championship, but I would still consider this under Brent Key a win this year. We'll see what happens next year if they can build on it, but I would give credit to Georgia Tech this year, absolutely.
Well, I mean, yeah, and Brent Key, he got the extension last year, so he's under contract with them through 2029. And you're looking at the ACC, and they're really starting to, I guess, formulate a lot of good coaches over there in that conference as teams are kind of built. As Dabo's still over there. I know people are up and down about if Dabo's going to be able to transition to the modern day. Well, still, that's still kind of wait to be seen. But I still think Dabo's a pretty good coach. I mean,
I think
still got
we'll have a good idea of that one after next year
yeah. And then we
or midway through.
got James Franklin going to Virginia Tech over there in the ACC.
Flipping
Uh,
every Penn State commit.
you have another one of Dabo Sweeney's assistants in Tony Elliott leading Virginia. So really good there. Mike Norvell's returning to FSU. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but
We'll see.
uh,
I was thinking about that. I was actually thinking about that last night. I was like, with his 13-win season, right, in 2023.
he hanging on to that, baby. Hanging on
Yeah,
to it.
but I mean, if you think like, the 2-10 season and then another losing season this year, he's still. I'm okay with him having one more year. He's still he's 20-18. I was thinking about this last night, so he still has a winning record. So yes, he's holding on to that 13-win season, but he also had a 10-loss season, right? So,
Yep.
well, I mean, we'll see, but I think if he doesn't get it done this next year, it'll be an issue.
Well, I think part of Florida State's season is or at least their issues, the past 3 years. That granted, that first year they relied very heavily on the transfer portal, and it worked really well for them. The past 2 years they've relied very heavily on the transfer portal. This year, especially with 40 plus transfers coming in, and it's just, you really have a lot of volatility in your program if that's what you're relying on. There's going to be a lot of turnover, and there's going to be, there's a lot of peaks and valleys that come with that. Because if you miss on your evaluations from the transfer portal, then you're not going to have a very good performing team. It's not going to, but it's not anything similar to your team what it was last year. If that makes sense. There's not a lot of carryovers, so you don't really get a trajectory like this. You think of somebody building a program, it's kind of more peaks and valleys and that sort of deal.
Yeah.
How do we get off topic here?
Talking about ACC and Georgia Tech.
Yeah. Yeah, ACC. Georgia Tech's still in a good, really good position there to compete. I didn't mention Rhett Lashley at SMU that he just signed an extension. So the ACC building up some good coaches. Still got Bill Belichick over there. Still don't know how that's turning out, but still a really big named coach over there in the ACC. And
This
of
is
course,
his
you got
one.
Mario Cristobal down at Miami, and
Yeah, this is his full offseason to recruit high school guys. So we'll see how that works. But
yeah, we'll see how it works. I mean, a name like Bill Belichick will get you in just about any household at least. Let's go ahead and move on to the next game, the Lone Star Showdown. We had Texas A&M traveling to Austin to take on the Longhorns, and Texas ended up winning 27-17, taking down the undefeated Aggies. I think this one was what you saw. The biggest one that stood out to me, or biggest thing that stood out to me in this one was that Texas, unlike they had been able to all year, was able to find the running game. And I think that's really what you saw kind of blossom into what a full look of what this Texas offense could be. Whenever it's, clicking on all cylinders, you saw how it was able to help Arch. Arch had some really good throws, really good deep balls on this one. And this one, it just shows how whenever Sark has a good running game and the running game is working effectively, how it's able to work really well for that Texas offense, and they're able to operate really efficiently. Texas A&M, on the other hand, definitely not their most complete game. Obviously, you're going to look at the late interception by Marcel Reed is probably where you're looking at and pointing to, being like, hey, this is what cost us. Because Texas A&M's going there, to score, going in, they're at the Texas, in the red zone, they're at the Texas, I think, 18-yard line. Marcel Reed ends up throwing the interception. And really what puts the gut check into this game and really kind of confirms, he also had an interception on Texas A&M's next possession, but really that was kind of more just like a, late drive, try to see if you can make some magic happen. But you really had an opportunity to close the game within one score there. And just the pick is really what sealed it up for you, kind of preventing that Texas A&M rally that we had seen them do a couple times this year.
yeah, that was the thing. It's like the stat line shows, it makes Marcel Reed look a little worse. But either way, I mean, you take those 2 interceptions away, he still had no touchdowns, right? And I think that's credit to the Texas pass rush. They were able to keep Marcel Reed kind of thrown off balance all game. And this year, historically, if you can get Marcel Reed to throw off balance, he struggles a little bit more than if you allow him to set his feet.
Probably the most uncomfortable he's looked almost all year.
Yeah, and the stat line reflects that. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not even mentioning the 2 interceptions because they're both late, but you take those away and it's still a pretty below average stat line, right? And again, like I said, that's credit to Texas pass rush. That was one of my concerns going into this one, as well as the A&M pass rush. It was pressure Reed, and what issues that would cause for A&M, and that showed. Also, A&M didn't really run the ball like they normally do or normally have all season, which I thought was pretty weird. They have a very dominant run game, and they just really didn't run the ball like they normally do. I don't know if that's because they wanted to try to go do away with it for this game because they knew Texas had a good run defense, but you don't know if you don't try, right? At least that's the way that I see it. Whereas, like you said, on the opposite side, Texas run game ended up being the difference, I think, in this game, outside of the O-line keeping Arch clean for the most part. I think what they had, A&M had 1 sack on Arch this game. That was I talked about it in the preview episode. I was like, man, if they can get to Arch, you saw it in the Florida game, they were, it causes problems for Arch as well. And it just wasn't the case this game. And I think that was one of those keys, just like I said, the run game was for Texas. So, also I wanted to note, it was the one game that I didn't pick due to the home field environment, and it was like that had a huge factor in this
huge
game.
factor.
And so I just wanted to note that that the environment was crazy. I mean, I watched the pregame as well before watching this game, and it was like I was like, A&M might be in trouble here, and it showed to be the case.
Yeah, that was definitely a very hostile environment. Shout out to the Texas fans, like we had mentioned going into it. It's like, this is probably one of the biggest games they've had um, in Austin, in quite some time. So it's just like you don't know kind of what that home environment's like. It's like, are you going to obviously get a much different version of a Texas home crowd whenever you got A&M coming to Austin versus, I don't know, back in the Big 12 days when you had Kansas State, Kansas coming into town. It's a little bit different environment whenever you get that hatred for the Aggies coming in. So really, really big, yeah, really big showing from the crowd. And I guess we got to talk about it, right? We're sitting here after the fact. A&M came out in the final poll. Obviously, we're recording this on Wednesday morning. Yeah, Wednesday morning. A&M came out in the final poll. It's kind of why we want to do it after the college football playoff poll. So we were able to give y'all some insights from after this game. Where are they sitting? How do these teams outlook? A&M currently sitting at number 7. Texas number 13 outside looking in for the playoff.
Seems like Texas will be out of the playoff this year.
Yeah, seems like they will be out. Probably 3 losses there. I know there's some debate amongst Texas fans about, it's like if we wouldn't have scheduled Ohio State, then we would be in. If they scheduled whatever and just beat some, they Northern Kentucky State, whoever.
Yeah,
I don't even know if that's an actual school, but
I actually
got
it. I actually got into an argument with one of my buddies who's a Texas fan. On Saturday during the Tennessee Vanderbilt game, he was saying how they needed Tennessee to beat Vanderbilt because Texas deserved to be in the playoff. And I said, well, actually, no, they don't. And he said, why schedule the same argument Texas fans are making, right? About, why schedule Ohio State?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, then why lose to Florida? It's like beat Florida and you're in. Screw the Ohio State game. He's like, well, we played them tough. And I was like, well, you didn't play Florida that tough. So it's one of those things like you can make an argument. I see the argument, but you lose 3 games, one of them being to a 4-8 Florida. Yeah, that's what I saw someone on Twitter too. It's like, and it was a good point. I think it was, it was one of the ESPN or former ESPN college analysts. But anyways, yeah, he said, that Florida loss, that's an unforgivable loss. I mean, that's just what it is. Had you won that game, you have the 10th win, and you'd have you had your 3rd top 10 win against A&M, you would have been in, no question. But that's why you play the game.
That's why you play the game. I mean, I see the point. They do probably have some of the best resume of wins. When you're looking at it, they beat OU, they beat Vanderbilt, they beat now A&M. There's one more that Texas fans point out that's drawing a blank on me.
Those are their 3 top 10 wins.
Those are the 3 top 10, but there's one more. They have a top 25 that they also have. I'm scrolling through it. I don't see it. Yeah, either way, that's who they're pointing to, right? Is those 3 top 10 wins. And I see the argument there, but then you also, like you said, you have the Florida loss, and then, they point to, they're like, well, Notre Dame got in last year and played for the national championship, and they lost to Northern Illinois.
It's they do not have another top 25 win. They have the loss to Ohio State and the loss to Georgia.
Yeah. And then the loss to Florida.
Yes, but of the ranked teams that they've lost to, it's Ohio State and Georgia.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and then, I mean, I get it. You're comparing yourself. You're like, well, they have better wins than possibly Notre Dame. I'm not going to sit here and pound the ground for freaking Notre Dame to be in the playoff. I think Notre Dame's in mainly because of an eye test, not necessarily because of
I agree.
Their resume or anything like that. If this is a resume-based rankings, what have you done? What have you shown me? Yeah, Notre Dame's probably should be on the outside, and they should probably be behind Miami. If we're being perfectly honest, as far as
based on head to head.
Who won the head to head, right? Does a game in November matter less because of when you scheduled them, right? So if like Miami plays them in November and beats them, everybody's like, oh, Miami's definitely in, as opposed to, if they played them in September, it's like that's just where they fell on the schedule. So either way, A&M probably definitely going to be in the playoff. Texas probably outside looking in, so going to miss it this year. Let's go ahead and roll on to the next one.
Yeah, LSU at Oklahoma, Oklahoma 17-13. The reason why I just took this one over is because I really don't have a whole lot to say about this one. It was not very fun to watch as a non-fan of either of these teams.
Mm-mm.
Um,
I
but
wasn't a fan. Even as a fan, it wasn't very
yeah,
fun to
yeah.
watch.
So my only notes were, it was probably the ugliest game of the week. I think there's no denying that one. John Mateer, hey, threw for over 300 this game. He did turn the ball over 3 times, but 300-yard game, hasn't done that since what, pre-surgery?
Yeah, pre-surgery.
Yeah, like I said, I don't have a whole lot to say about this one. Great defense overall, other than LSU's couple LSU blown coverages. But yeah, other than that, the floor is yours for this one.
All right, so yeah, I'm not gonna spend too much time on this one. Obviously, the OU defense continues to play absolutely elite football.
I think
Um,
undeniably the best defense probably in college football.
yeah, and the way they just continue to show up and how they're able to play, it really speaks to what they believe in, right? When how they're able to play on short fields, right? The offense shortchanges you. The offense gives you a turnover in the red zone. And then now you're sitting there at your 20, you got the opposing offense is in the 20. That's where you're starting your drive. And, LSU had that. They ran 2 or 3 plays right there at the goal line. Van Buren ends up throwing an interception in the end zone. Peyton Bowen reads him, picks it off, and you're just like, the resiliency of this defense just to continue, hey, we're going to show up, play this down. LSU had 2 drives where they were inside, they were first and goal to go. So they're inside the 10 right there, and they escaped with 3 points. So, I mean, just the resiliency of this defense is really what keeps OU winning these games. And it's gonna be what keeps OU in basically every game they're going to play in. I know everybody says, the Oklahoma offense, they're terrible, whatever. I think you're seeing they are playing with 2 hurt running backs. Torrey Braylock's dealing with a hurt shoulder. So I mean, you can see him after certain runs, he's running off the field, his shoulders dangling down. Xavier Robinson, he's got 2 banged up knees, he's wearing 2 knee braces. But that's all they can get to go play for them right now. Because they got 2 guys that are looking at the transfer portal, and they have Jade Knott, who I don't know what Jade Knott's doing. Nobody knows. Was
That
a
was
lot of hype.
one of the weirdest ones of the offseason. That was a big
Big deal in the offseason, right? Yeah.
big portal pickup, and then he's just been non-existent for whatever reason.
Yeah. So, and let's talk about it. So the John Mateer, right? Obviously, 3 interceptions doesn't look good. One of them is off a deflected pass. That one kind of happens. The other 2 just not reading out the field. Looks like he's predetermined where he's going with the ball. Throws it over late over the middle. Ends up getting intercepted there. But you got to give him credit for what he is. Right, he's shown to be a gamer throughout the season, even post injury, before injury. He's shown to be a gamer. When you need him in the fourth quarter, that's usually when John Mateer is going to play his best football, and that's when he did in this game. OU's down 3-10 in the third quarter. He ends up catching Burks on a little great call by Ben Arbuckle, a little wide receiver screen. Burks takes it 45 yards to the house. And then obviously you get the late touchdown. I don't necessarily know what LSU's defense is doing here. They just decide to not cover Isaiah Satania, who is
it was probably the most exciting play for the OU offense.
Dude, yeah, I mean, it was. We're like, we haven't had a guy this open. I haven't seen that in years.
I watched that and I was like, what are they doing?
There's nobody within like 20 yards of our best player, right? Isaiah Satanga, I mean, he's been great for this team. He has 980 something yards receiving, so almost an 1,000-yard receiver in the SEC with on a team that's passing offense has been pretty deflated. So it's like, if it's not going Satanga, it's almost not going anywhere or not moving the ball, right? So, yeah, they just completely uncover him. He goes 58 yards to the house, and there's just absolutely nobody even near him. So, with that being said, OU cashes a ticket to the playoff. I don't think it's
and probably, I mean,
home field.
I'm going to say most likely
in the most likely scenario, home field.
You're definitely OU is definitely in the playoff and probably clinched a home game.
Yeah, clinched a home game.
Whether it be the 7 seed, 8 seed, I think there's a home game there in Norman.
Yeah, and I want to clarify this. So the everybody, a lot, even OU fans, actually, I'd say probably even mostly OU fans, they're really down on this team's offense, right? Um, they say, well, it just hasn't looked good since John Mateer's return, from injury. It's like, well, I would also make the argument OU has faced really good defenses since John Mateer's injury, right? They faced Texas. Texas is top 15 defense. South Carolina, they're still a top 25 defense as far as like S&P plus rankings. Ole Miss, they're not there. They're like a 50th ranked defense. So in that game, OU scored 26 points. Tennessee, they're not up there in as far as the top defense, but that game OU scored 33 points. Then you go and face Alabama, who's a top 15 defense. Missouri, who's a top 15 defense, and LSU is a top 15 defense. Um, but you're finding a way to win these games, and to find a way to win a game when you lose the turnover battle. 3 to, I think it was 3-1, whatever. I think they were -2 in the turnover margin. Just speaks a lot to this team's kind of character, their grit to be able to, win these games that you're probably not supposed to. So shout out them. And that's about all I
Shout
got on
out
that.
them.
Shout out them. That's about all I got on this one.
All righty. So then we will move on to the game. Ohio State at Michigan. Ohio State was able to take care of business, 27-9. I remember you texted me on Saturday saying you weren't feeling pretty good about your pick with Michigan. And I'll say this was pregame, I believe. And I'll say in that first quarter, I was like, man, I'm starting to not feel good about my Ohio State pick. And I think that's kind of where everyone's mind was in this one. It was like that first quarter, everyone was like, is it happening again? Is this really happening again? Is Ohio State really doing this again? And I mean, that's props to Ohio State's coaching in this one. I think they haven't had their back against the wall at all this season, and they looked like a team that had their back against, like they were battle tested. It's what it looked like, right? Yeah. The way that they were to maintain their poise throughout this game, especially that first half, and particularly that first quarter, but the first half as well. Michigan's defense, I think, overall played, pretty well, especially in the first half. I know, Ohio State was able to dominate statistically the second half. I think that just shows who they are as a team, that the number one team in the country. I think we've been saying that all year, undeniably.
Yeah, unquestioned. It's kind of been our
but Ohio State found themselves, like I said, backs against the wall. They showed real poise. The only other thing I really want to note in this, because it ended up being a pretty one-sided game towards the end.
Say the score.
Yeah,
Ohio
I think
State
I did.
won 20. Did they 27-9? If we didn't.
Yeah. I think I did, but if I did not, 27-9. But I think the moral of the story in this game, it was second half rushing stats. It was Ohio State's 96 to Michigan's -8. And that was in the second half. And overall, Ohio State had like 180, 190 yards on the ground to Michigan's like 100. And if you go back, I think you go back the last like 23, 24 years, every single game, no, the decision, whoever won out rushed the other. I think it's like ever since from 2001 to this year, whoever outrushed the other was the one that ended up winning. So, and that was Ohio State in this case.
Yeah, it kind of boils down to, right, the notion around this game is, hey, who's the more physical team? Whoever imposes their will, that's where that's built around, right? Who runs the football? Who's able to stop the run the best? That's going to be who ends up winning this football game. I wanted to give a little shout out here to Julian Sand. Like we had talked about, this is probably the most hostile environment he's ever played in, at least, to this point in his young career. And it started out rough. The early interception on the first drive didn't look good, especially after Michigan had just drove down the field. Now, granted, Ohio State held them, on Michigan's first two drives. Ohio State held them to field goals, which I think was huge for this team.
It could have gotten ugly quick if they let them score 7 both times.
They let both
at least
times.
Even once.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at a 14-0 Michigan lead, and this game looks, the makeup of it's a lot different. But Julian Sand State, even after throwing that interception on the second play of the game, or second play of the for the Ohio State offense, he was able to just keep his composure, rallied, and played a really good game, which they're gonna need from him, like going in as they go into playoffs and obviously the Big Ten championship where they got to face up against Indiana. And overall, yeah, just dominant, especially second half for Ohio State. I know we caught some, I will say this, we caught some flack for the, kind of our take. Yeah, there was a little clip of us where we're talking about, Michigan, their keys to victory. I want to make it clear, right? When we're outlining somebody's keys to victory, like that's what they have to do to win. Obviously, Michigan didn't do those things, so then therefore they did not win. So I don't know why we're catching so much flack for it, but
and
we are.
especially if it's a clip, they probably
It's
don't
a clip,
understand.
right?
They probably don't understand that if we're doing one team's keys, we're probably also doing the other team's keys to win.
Right.
So
Right, and I mean, for the keys of this one, it was pretty much the same for both teams. Obviously, Michigan they would have wanted a much bigger performance here from Bryce Underwood. 8 for 18 with an interception and only 63 yards. We just talked about it with. I mean, that's a similar style line to what Gunnar Stockton put up.
yeah,
It's just whenever you weren't able to run the ball, you're just it really makes you one dimensional. And if you're one dimensional against a really good Ohio State defense. It's gonna be very tough. You make yourself out for a long day there.
absolutely, yeah. That was, like I said, same thing in the preview episode, right? Talked about Bryce Underwood needed to have, not necessarily the legendary game, right, as a true freshman, but just do make yourself, a playmaker in this game. Do something that makes plays, and that it was just average stat line, or maybe even below, and that's
I would say below.
yeah, and
Definitely below,
that's what happens when you can't make plays, and props to Ohio State's defense.
yeah. Props to
So
Ohio State's defense. So, we got anything else on the game, man? More physical team won. Ohio State moves on, still the number one seed in the playoff rankings. Now they're going to the Big Ten championship to face an undefeated number 2 Indiana. And what seems to be an undefeated showdown, and probably their first. I mean, both these teams are going to be in the playoff, so probably their first real playoff game, if you want to say that.
it's really for the Big Ten championship is for the to call yourself Big Ten champion, and then for seeding in the playoff. That's really all it is.
That's all it is.
Are you the 1 seed, or are you the 3 or 4?
Exactly. Yeah, that's really all it boils down to. That's it on the game, man. More physical team wins. Shout out Ohio State. Michigan playoff chances are over. But overall, I still don't think you're too mad if you're a Michigan fan. I know that's gonna hit. That's gonna hit completely wrong. I'm already well aware of it. Right? You just lost to your biggest rival. I understand how important this game is, but you're still 9-3 with a true freshman quarterback. And Bryce Underwood has shown some promise as he's developed throughout the season. This was probably just his, kind of his toughest test outside of the week 2 game against OU, where you're looking at two comparable defenses. So, I think there's still some optimism going forward if you're a Michigan fan here. I know it's tough to see kind of right now, especially in the aftermath of this game, but yeah.
Yeah, no, overall dominating win for Ohio State. All right, so we'll talk about the last game on the docket from the preview episode. Vanderbilt went to Knoxville to play Tennessee and had a dominating win over Tennessee. First time in, I believe, 6 years. Vanderbilt wins 45-24. Yeah, this one was a tough watch. In the second half, it was a tough watch. Tennessee
tied
played
at halftime.
Yeah, Tennessee played a decent first half, like you just said, and I noted it. 21-21 at halftime. Watching this game, I knew it was going to be a shootout, which I didn't know it was just going to be a one half shootout. But I knew that Tennessee's defense wasn't going to be able to limit to the extent that Tennessee fans probably would have preferred. But Tennessee was going to have to go and win this one on offense, right? And that wasn't the case. Tennessee was able to get to Diego Pavia, not necessarily sack-wise, but just pressure-wise, and he was able to, he ended up turning the ball over twice in the first quarter. But he made a great turnaround. He adjusted and didn't get flustered, and that shows how good of a football player he is, especially in the second half. But yeah, on the Tennessee side, defensively, can't give up 580 yards in a game and expect to win, especially at home. I mean, you're giving up 580 yards. 314 of them came on the ground.
Yeah.
Got to give.
I made a note of that as well. It's like,
Yeah.
that's a really tough recipe to ask yourself to be able to win a game when you're giving up 300 rushing.
Yeah, and that is the moral of the game, right? Props to Vanderbilt for dominating the run game. But the other side so the offense was kind of the story of the game, in the media and like right now. And like I said, 580 yards. That's crazy, especially against a Tennessee team who's normally pretty good, whether it be defensively or offensively, right? But they got to Vanderbilt's defense sacked Joey Aguilar 4 times.
Mm.
And that's always been the big thing this year. If you wanted Tennessee to compete in these games, you had to keep Joey Aguilar upright. And Vanderbilt was able to get to him. So, and I think that's between the offense in the second half and the defense getting to Joey Aguilar in the second half, that's what kind of kind of blew this one wide open. And yeah, so you saw that dominating win for Vandy, 45-24, as I said.
Yeah, 45-24. Yeah, I don't have too much to add to it. It's just it's kind of one of those things. The Tennessee rushing attack it hasn't been as good as this year as it was last year. But Joey Aguilar has given you more as far as like in the passing game. And we even said it. We said, hey, they're going to have to outscore them. I got faith in Joey Aguilar to be able to do that. Unfortunately, they were able to match him in the first half, especially winning a game. I know to just got to give a shout out to Vandy here, like to be able to win a game in which you lost the turnover margin 2-0, and be able to win by that margin of, what is that? I'm terrible at math. Is that 21 points? Yeah, 21 points. So yeah, to be able to win by that big of a margin while also losing the turnover battle, I mean, it speaks to a lot. Obviously, that ground game and Diego Pavia had a big impact there, and it was just a big game all around for Diego Pavia. I mean, he's their quarterback, threw for 268 yards. He's also their leading rusher on 20 carries for 165 yards. Obviously, some of that came on a couple of really big runs is where you get kind of that long average out of it from. But I mean, he was still there. He's still who ran the ball the most for him. Probably, I know some of them came from broken plays, where Tennessee pass rush is getting home, not able to find something. So then he squeaks through the rush or the passing lanes, and then he goes on a run while everybody else is playing coverage. But still, you got to give him credit where credit's due. However, outlook after the playoff rankings, Vanderbilt still looks like they are probably out of the college football playoff.
So it seems, and so is Tennessee.
And so is Tennessee, but yeah.
No, yeah, the ranking, the ranking came out last night, as Murdoch said. It's Wednesday morning, so last night the CFP playoff came out. The final one before the selection Sunday or Saturday. But yeah, Tennessee will be unranked in both the AP and the college football playoff for the first time in however many consecutive weeks. So yeah, they're unranked, 8-4 again. So right now under Heupel, it's 7-6 in his first year, 11-2, then 9-4, and then a 10-3, and now 8-4. So we'll see next year. It's looking pretty good. It is, like I said, Wednesday, December 3rd. So it is early signing day. Tennessee's already signed 3 5-stars this morning. So Gabriel will send the 5-star offensive tackle, Faison Brandon, the 5-star quarterback, Tristan Keys, 5-star wide receiver. But we'll talk about all the recruiting stuff in the offseason. But yeah, it's looking up for Tennessee. Well, I trust Heupel to turn it around. But yeah, it's another 8-4 season for Tennessee.
Yeah, for all you college football sickos out there that like to do the recruiting talk, we'll do a whole episode kind of. We'll probably do it. When do you want to do it? Probably after the January signing day. You want to do it after then, probably.
Say that again. Sorry, I was actually watching some recruiting stuff there. And some head coaching stuff happening actually that I was going to talk to you about. But
so we'll get y'all caught up. We're gonna try to keep unlike Kyle, college football likes to do it, where they just like to throw the off season right in the middle of the season. We like to focus on the here and now, so we'll stay focused on the season. In the off season, we'll catch y'all up probably, after the January signing day, we'll do a recruiting class recap after that 2026 class is finished up. Give y'all some players to look out for. We did it last year with some like freshman All-Americans to be on the lookout for. And we'll recap that. Then we'll also catch y'all up on the coaching carousel. Obviously, the transfer portal's right after that, so we'll have plenty of stuff to talk about this off season to keep y'all updated. And that's obviously when we do our power rankings and SEC. We kind of make stuff up there, but to fill in the off season. But we will be locked in all off season for y'all, and we appreciate y'all for tuning in. Monty, you got anything else to close out the show here?
No, sir. Yeah, just continue to keep eyes on the coaching carousel. Despite it already being crazy enough with Kiffin going to LSU and Brian Silverfield, Arkansas, and this and that, it's just there's as of today, it just seems like it's getting more crazy. So continue to keep eyes on that.
Let's get a little breaking news update. What happened?
Looks like Brian Hartline's going to become the head coach of USF to take over for Golish.
So who does Penn State hire?
Yeah,
that's the question that's still lingering. The first team to fire their head coach is the only one who almost seemingly out of all the
big names,
spots,
yeah,
the big names, the only one that hasn't filled that vacancy yet. So we'll see where Penn State ends up going. As always, stay locked into the show. Tell your friends about the show. Word of mouth is still the best way to spread it. Subscribe to the channel. Set up notifications. You'll get alerted whenever a new episode comes out. And we appreciate y'all for tuning in. And we will catch y'all later this week on the conference championship week preview. So thank y'all for tuning in, and we'll catch y'all. Peace.